Tonight, you'll pour a glass of water from your tap without a second thought. You won't check it. You won't boil it. You won't wonder if it will kill you. But for most of human history, that glass of water was one of the most dangerous things you could put in your body. Here's the strange part. The real answer isn't that ancient humans just toughed it out and drank dirty water anyway. The real answer is far stranger. They mostly didn't drink water at all. Your ancestors built entire civilizations on liquids that weren't water, and the reason wasn't taste. It wasn't ritual. It was survival. Let's go back further than you'd expect. Your body carries a genetic fingerprint of this history, and it's older than agriculture, older than fire, maybe even older than your species. In 2014, biologist Matthew Kerrigan traced the evolution of a liver enzyme called ADH4. This enzyme breaks down ethanol, the alcohol found in fermented fruit. Kerrigan found that around 10 million years ago, a single mutation made this enzyme 40 times more efficient at metabolizing alcohol. That mutation appeared right around the time your ancestors came down from the trees and started walking on the ground. Why does that matter? Fallen fruit ferments. It sits on the forest floor, softens, and starts producing alcohol as wild yeast breaks down its sugars. A tree-dwelling primate rarely encounters this. A ground-dwelling one runs into it constantly. The primates who could safely process a little alcohol got extra calories from rotting fruit that would have poisoned their cousins. They survived better. They passed that trait on. You inherited that trait. It's sometimes called the drunken monkey hypothesis, and it means your body was tuned to handle fermented liquid millions of years before anyone brewed a single drop on purpose. So when your ancestors eventually started deliberately fermenting things, they weren't inventing a taste for alcohol. They were switching on a switch that was already there. Now, fast forward. 10,000 years ago, in what is now southeastern Turkey, something strange was happening at a site called Göbekli Tepe. This is one of the oldest known monumental structures on Earth, built before farming, before pottery as we usually picture it, before permanent villages. Archaeologist Oliver Dietrich and his team studied massive stone vats found at the site, some large enough to hold over 100 liters. Residue analysis suggested these vats were used for large-scale fermentation, likely of grains soaked into a beer-like drink. Think about what that means. Before humans had fully committed to farming as a way of life, they may have already been organizing labor, community, and ritual gathering around alcohol production. Not water, beer. Why would that be worth the effort? Because water was a gamble. Untreated water carries bacteria like E. coli and Vibrio cholerae. It carries parasites. It carries the kind of invisible threats that could wipe out a family in days with no warning and no cure. Fermentation, on the other hand, does something remarkable. The process itself kills many pathogens. Wild yeast and bacteria outcompete the harmful microbes. The resulting drink is more acidic, sometimes has a slightly higher alcohol content, and is often boiled at some stage of preparation. It's safer than the water it was made from. Your ancestors likely didn't understand germ theory. They didn't know what bacteria were, but they understood something just as powerful, a pattern. The people who drank fermented grain or fruit got sick less often than the people who drank straight from the river. That's not superstition, that's applied science, discovered the hard way, generation after generation. This is where biomolecular archaeologist Patrick McGovern enters the story. McGovern has spent decades analyzing ancient pottery residue from sites across the world, and he's found chemical traces of fermented beverages going back at least 9,000 years in China, made from rice, honey, and fruit. He's found similar evidence in ancient Egypt, Iran, and Scandinavia. His research suggests fermentation wasn't a rare invention that happened once and spread. It was independently discovered over and over by different peoples in different climates, using whatever ingredients were on hand. Why would so many unrelated cultures land on the same solution? Because the problem was universal. Every early human settlement needed a reliable liquid that wouldn't make its people sick. And nearly every culture landed on some version of the same fix: ferment it. In ancient Egypt, beer was so central to daily life that workers building the pyramids were partially paid in it, not as a luxury, as a ration, as calories and hydration in one relatively safe package. In medieval Europe, centuries later, something called small beer became a household staple. It had a low alcohol content, barely enough to taste, but it was brewed, which meant it was safer than the well water most families had access to. Children drank it. It wasn't about getting drunk, it was about not getting sick. Here's the twist most people never expect. For most of human history, staying hydrated and staying sober were not the same goal, and they were sometimes directly at odds. Choosing the safer drink often meant choosing the one with alcohol in it. That single fact reshapes how you should think about ancient daily life. Picture a farmer in ancient Mesopotamia. Picture a laborer in Egypt. Picture a peasant in medieval England. None of them were choosing between water and beer the way you might choose between water and soda today. They were choosing between a drink that might carry disease and a drink that almost certainly wouldn't. It also reshapes how you think about alcohol itself. Today, alcohol gets treated primarily as a recreational substance, sometimes a dangerous one. But for thousands of years, in low, steady doses, it functioned as a public health tool. It was medicine before medicine existed. It was infrastructure before infrastructure existed. That doesn't mean ancient people didn't understand overindulgence. Plenty of ancient texts warn against drunkenness. The difference is that the baseline wasn't zero. The baseline was a mildly fermented drink, consumed throughout the day by nearly everyone, including children in some cultures, as the default hydration strategy. Modern water treatment changed all of this almost overnight, at least on the timescale of human history. Chlorination became widespread in cities only around a century ago. Before that, urban water was often even more dangerous than rural water because waste and drinking sources frequently mixed. Cholera outbreaks in 19th century London killed thousands before physician John Snow traced one outbreak to a single contaminated pump in 1854, one of the first clear demonstrations that water itself, not bad air, was spreading disease. Once that link was understood, and once filtration and chlorination followed, something remarkable happened. Water became safe. For the first time in the history of your species, in much of the world, you could drink straight from a tap and reasonably expect not to get sick. That's an extraordinary privilege. It's also extremely recent. If you compressed human history into a single day, safe tap water has existed for less than the last few seconds. So the next time you fill a glass at the sink, notice what you're actually holding. You're holding something your ancestors would have considered close to a miracle. A liquid with no need for yeast, no need for boiling, no need for a fermentation process refined over thousands of years of trial and error. Just water. Clean, on demand, unremarkable to you. Your body still carries the old adaptation. Your liver still processes alcohol more efficiently than most animals on Earth, a leftover from ancestors who ate fermenting fruit off forest floors millions of years ago. Your culture still carries the old habits, in the wine at dinner, the beer after work, the traditions that once served a function far more urgent than celebration. You inherited a solution to a problem you'll likely never face. Somewhere in your biology and in your customs, echoes of that ancient bargain still linger quietly, long after the danger it solved has mostly disappeared. Tonight, when you pour that glass of water without a second thought, remember this. For most of the people who ever lived, that same simple act would have been a risk they couldn't afford to take.